She was just a poor girl with nothing but a broken umbrella and a kind heart. He was a billionaire, hiding from a life built on lies. When Elena saved Damien during a storm, neither knew their worlds were about to collide in the most unforgettable way. Secrets, betrayal, and a love that defied power, status, and fear. This isn't just a romance. It's a story of second chances, courage, and the kind of love that fights back. Where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story like this again. The rain came down in sheets, drumming on the cracked pavement as Elena Dawes clutched her half-broken umbrella and darted down the quiet street. Her work apron was soaked, her shoes squelching with every hurried step, but she didn't slow. Thunder growled in the distance, louder than usual, and she knew the road past the old bus stop would start to flood if she didn't make it home soon. Wind tugged at her hair, at her clothes, at her tired body. But then, just as she passed the dimly lit bus shelter, something caught her eye. A figure hunched on the ground, barely more than a silhouette in the storm. She slowed. A man sat there, drenched to the bone, wearing what looked like a designer suit, now ruined with mud and water. His head was bowed, arms wrapped around himself like he was trying to keep the world out. For a moment, Elena hesitated. She had no business getting involved. She had barely enough warmth for herself, let alone a stranger. But something, maybe the way he didn't even look up when she approached, stirred a quiet pull inside her chest. "Are you okay?" she asked, stepping closer, her umbrella tilting just enough to shield a bit of him from the downpour. He looked up, slowly. His face was pale, handsome in a way that made her pause but hollow. His eyes weren't scared, they were exhausted, almost like he didn't expect anyone to care. I was robbed," he said, his voice low, hoarse. "Phone's dead. I've been out here a while." Elena glanced around. No one else in sight, just her, the storm, and this stranger who clearly didn't belong to this side of town. "Come on," she said before her mind could argue. "I don't live far." He didn't argue. He just nodded, rose to his feet unsteadily, and followed her. It wasn't until they reached her little cabin at the edge of town, a weathered structure barely held together with patchwork repairs and stubborn will, that he finally spoke again. "You sure about this?" he asked, standing at her door like a child afraid to track mud into a pristine room. "It's dry," she said, pushing the door open. "That's all that matters tonight." Inside, she handed him a frayed towel, pointed him toward the tiny bathroom, and put a pot of soup on the stove. It wasn't much, leftover lentils with a hint of spice, but it was warm. When he reappeared in the flickering candlelight, wearing one of her late brother's old shirts, he looked different. Still out of place, still too polished in the edges, but less like a ghost. She served him a bowl, sat across from him, and didn't ask any more questions. The wind howled outside, and the old roof creaked, but inside, it was oddly calm. He ate in silence, occasionally sneaking glances at her as she patched a tear in her apron. "You live here alone?" he asked eventually. She nodded. "It's not much, but it's mine." He set his spoon down. "Thank you for not asking anything." Elena shrugged. "Sometimes people don't need questions. They need soup and a place to sit." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "I'm Damien," he said after a beat. She looked at him for a long moment. That name didn't tell her much, but somehow it suited him. Like he was trying to be someone else, or forget who he used to be. "Elena," she replied. That night, as the storm raged and lightning danced across the sky, they sat in that small cabin, wrapped in a strange stillness. She didn't know he was a billionaire heir, or that he was hiding from more than just a mugging. And he didn't know that this simple girl, with her patched clothes and quiet grace, would change his life more than all the wealth in the world ever had. The morning after the storm, Elena found Damien sitting on the rickety porch bench, cradling a chipped mug of tea and watching the fog rise off the fields beyond her cabin. He looked almost at peace, his eyes calm, hair still damp from a quick wash, and the oversized shirt she'd lent him rumpled from sleep. She hadn't expected him to stay. Most strangers didn't. Yet there he was, quietly sipping tea like he belonged. "You sleep okay?" she asked as she joined him. He glanced at her, a small, sincere smile lifting the corners of his mouth. "Better than I have in weeks." That surprised her. But she didn't press. She simply nodded and looked out into the mist with him. Silence hung comfortably between them, broken only by birds beginning to stir in the trees. Days passed and Damien made no move to leave. He said he needed time, said someone was wiring him money. Elena didn't question it. People had their reasons for running or waiting, and something about him felt safe, even if every instinct told her he didn't belong in this world. Still, he made himself useful. He helped patch the hole in the roof, carried water when her taps failed, and even offered to repaint the front of the cabin. It was the kind of help she hadn't had in years, and she tried not to get used to it. One afternoon, she brought him with her to the market. She hesitated at first. He stood out with his clean jawline and polite, measured speech, but he insisted on carrying her baskets and setting up her tiny jewelry stand. She had sold beaded bracelets and handmade necklaces since she was 15, ever since her mother passed away. It was hardly enough to live on, but it kept her grounded. As they arranged the colorful trinkets on the old wooden table, Damien handled each piece with surprising care. "You made all of these?" he asked, eyes scanning a bracelet of tiny, woven shells. "Every single one," she replied, her fingers moving swiftly as she sorted through the inventory. "People love you here," he observed, noticing the way the vendors greeted her warmly, some even offering discounts on produce she hadn't asked for. She shrugged. "They're kind. I help when I can." That day, sales were better than usual, partly because of her usual customers, and partly because Damien, surprisingly charming when he wanted to be, helped pitch the jewelry with the ease of a born salesman. His smile, easy yet refined, drew people in, and she caught herself watching him more than once. But something about him kept tugging at her mind. The way he carefully folded the cloth napkin at lunch. The way he spoke, precise, articulate, not like someone who grew up in places like this. And then there was the way he looked at the simplest things, a street musician, a cracked window, a child chasing a balloon, with this kind of reverence, like he hadn't seen them in years. Elena began to wonder if he had truly fallen on hard times, or if he had chosen to fall. That evening, as they walked back to the cabin under the dusky sky, he grew quiet. She glanced sideways at him, sensing something restless beneath his calm. "You okay?" she asked. He paused, then nodded. "Yeah, just thinking." She didn't push. People who stayed often carried stories too heavy for quick explanations, and she wasn't one to chase ghosts. But that night, as she lay on her creaky mattress listening to the crickets outside, she found herself thinking about his hands, how they didn't have the roughness of someone used to hard labor, and the small scar near his wrist that looked like a burn mark from a cufflink, not a kitchen. Meanwhile, Damien stood in the moonlight by the window. Phone in hand, finally powered on. A message blinked on the screen from his assistant. "They're looking for you. Your fiancé is here. Be careful." His fingers hovered above the reply button, but he couldn't send anything back. Not yet. Not while Elena was in the next room, asleep, trusting him. He couldn't bring himself to ruin this. Not yet. Elena woke to sunlight filtering through the faded curtains and the faint sound of birds outside, but something felt off. The warmth that had begun to grow inside her small cabin over the past few days, the comfort of another presence, was gone. Damien's makeshift bedding near the fireplace was empty. His borrowed jacket no longer hung from the chair. Panic bloomed in her chest. She stepped outside, scanning the dusty road and nearby fields, but there was no sign of him. He hadn't even left a note. She spent the day searching, first at the market, then the nearby clinic where he once went for cold medicine, and finally along the trail that led to the edge of the forest. Nothing. No footprints. No neighbors had seen him. She tried to reason with herself. Maybe he'd gone into town to finally get help. Maybe he was coming back. But the silence screamed otherwise. By the time dusk settled and she returned home, her heart felt hollow. Had he used her? Was she just a break in his story? A brief detour before returning to a life she didn't understand? She curled up on her bed, not crying, just still. This is why she didn't open up. People left, always. But just as the sky slipped into inky night, headlights swept across her window. She sat up, startled. A moment later, her front door creaked open, and in walked Damien, holding a basket full of groceries in one hand and a brand new kettle and small generator in the other. "Hey," he said softly, almost sheepishly. She didn't move. Her breath caught somewhere between relief and fury. "Where were you?" I had to sort something out, he said, placing the basket down carefully. I should have left a note, I know, I'm sorry. She stood, arms crossed, but her eyes betrayed her, hurt, confused. I thought you disappeared, like everyone else. He stepped closer, hands raised in apology. I didn't mean to scare you, I needed to handle something personal. What kind of something? She asked, narrowing her eyes. He hesitated, just a beat too long. Nothing dangerous, I promise. She didn't push further. Not because she believed him entirely, but because part of her was just glad he came back. That night, for the first time, the lights in the cabin glowed from the hum of the generator. They cooked together, vegetables, rice, and for dessert, fruit from the market. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and bright, and their laughter filled the space like music. Yet as the meal wound down and they sat with cups of hot tea, Elena caught him staring at her, eyes distant. You're quiet, she said, offering a smile. He forced one back. Just thinking, she tilted her head. About? He hesitated again, then shook his head. About how good this feels. Elena sensed something else, though, a weight behind his words, something pressing against the walls he had built around himself. She wanted to ask more, but didn't. She'd learned that people only spoke their truths when they were ready. Still, the quiet between them now felt heavier. What she didn't know was that Damien had received another message just before returning. She's here. Valerie arrived an hour ago. She's asking questions. Valerie, his fiancée in name only, was someone he had tried to avoid for months. Their engagement was more contract than romance, forged between families for power. He had run from it, run into the rain, run to Elena. But the truth couldn't hide forever. The next morning, across town, a sleek black SUV pulled into the market. Valerie stepped out, sunglasses low over her face, a photo of Damien on her phone. She moved from vendor to vendor, speaking with practiced charm, showing his face. Elena, sorting bracelets at her stand, overheard someone mention her. The guy helping Elena, he looks just like that, a fruit seller whispered. Elena's body tensed. She turned, heart pounding, and caught sight of the woman. Polished, cold. Familiar in a way that made her stomach churn. That wasn't just a friend. That was someone important. Someone from the world Damien didn't talk about. She packed up her stall in silence, her thoughts in chaos. That night, when Damien returned, Elena stood by the cabin door, arms crossed, the wind swirling around them. Someone's looking for you, she said, voice low. Damien froze. Her eyes locked onto his, disappointment clouding them. You lied. He opened his mouth, ready to explain, but she stepped back, her face unreadable. I don't want to hear it right now. And with that, she walked away. This time, she didn't look back. The city felt suffocating the moment Damien stepped back into it. The sleek black car that picked him up at the edge of town slid through traffic like a shadow, but all Damien could think about was Elena's silence as she walked away. The look in her eyes had haunted his sleep for nights, hurt, betrayed, unreadable, and he deserved every bit of it. At his family's estate, staff greeted him like a long-lost prince, and Valerie waited in the marble foyer with perfectly curled hair and an expectant smile that made his stomach twist. She stepped forward to embrace him, but he held up a hand. It's over, Valerie, he said calmly, though his voice trembled with the weight of it. Her expression flickered. Excuse me? I can't marry you. I won't, he added, stepping past her. She followed, heels clacking on the floor like gunshots. Do you know what you're throwing away? He stopped and turned. Everything, he said, and I've never felt lighter. That night, he tried calling Elena. Her phone rang once, then disconnected. He tried again the next morning. Nothing. He even sent people to the market, to her cabin, to the edge of the woods, but every message came back the same. She was gone. What he didn't know was that Elena had packed her life into a single suitcase and vanished into the folds of a distant fishing village. The kind of place where no one asked questions and no one cared who you used to be. She took a job cleaning rooms at a tiny seaside motel, traded bracelets for bleach and floors, and let the salt air carry away the pieces of the dream she'd once clung to. But no matter how hard she scrubbed, she couldn't erase Damien's face. His laugh echoed in her mind, his warmth haunted the corners of her cold bed, and worst of all, she missed the lies almost as much as the truth. She had opened her door to a stranger and somehow, without meaning to, had handed him her heart. Then one afternoon, While she was mopping the lobby floor, two guests chatted near the desk. "Did you hear about the billionaire who's been searching town after town for some girl?" one of them asked. "Yeah, they say she saved him during a storm or something." Romantic as hell. Elena froze, her mop still in hand, her breath caught. No names were mentioned, but her heart knew. It had to be Damien. That night, she walked the beach alone. The wind tugged at her sweater, the stars hidden behind clouds. What would happen if he found her again? Would she forgive him? Could she? Across the city, Damien's team finally caught a break. A boy at a roadside kiosk in a small town said he'd seen someone who matched her description, working at a motel across the street. Damien didn't wait. He left that night. When he burst into the motel lobby, the receptionist looked up in alarm. "Sir, do you have a reservation?" "I'm looking for someone," he said breathlessly. Then he saw her. Elena emerged from the laundry room carrying a basket of wet sheets, her face pale as she froze in the doorway. Their eyes locked, time collapsing around them. "I'm sorry," Damien said, stepping forward. "I should have told you everything from the start, but I didn't want you to see my money. I wanted you to see me." She looked away, her voice quiet and broken. "I saw you, Damien, and I lost you." He moved closer. "I didn't come here to fix my conscience. I came to fix my heart. It doesn't beat right without you." For a moment, neither of them breathed. Then slowly, painfully, she walked past him, but didn't leave. She turned back, eyes glistening. "Let's talk." They sat outside beneath the flickering motel sign as the waves whispered in the distance. He told her everything, about his family, his past, why he ran, and she listened, quiet and still. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said finally. "Just a chance. A real one. No more lies." Elena stared at the ground. "I don't need your money, Damien, but I need your honesty." "Then come with me," he said. "Not to some palace, just somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can be us." She hesitated, the wind brushing her hair across her face. Then finally she nodded, and just like that, a second chance began. They moved into a small cottage by the sea, far from the city lights, the tabloids, the questions. The house was nothing like the mansion Damien had grown up in. It had peeling paint, uneven floors, and a stubborn front door that groaned every time it opened. But it had windows that caught the morning light and a porch where the breeze smelled like salt and hope. Elena picked it. Damien didn't hesitate. He'd have followed her anywhere. At first, it felt like they were living inside a secret. Mornings were slow. He learned to cook eggs without burning them. She taught him how to gut fish at the market and bargain without getting swindled. They spent afternoons walking barefoot along the beach, talking about nothing and everything. Evenings were filled with laughter and the warmth of bodies side by side, no shadows hanging over them. It was the kind of peace neither of them had ever believed they could have. But peace is fragile. Word got out. It started with a blurry photo on social media. Damien holding Elena's hand outside a market stall. Then a drone buzzed above their roof one morning. The next week, two men in suits parked down the road in a car that never left. Reporters came next, shouting questions and snapping photos through the bushes. Headlines spread like wildfire. Runaway billionaire found living with mystery woman in coastal village. Elena's hands shook when she saw her face plastered on a gossip blog. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said one night, voice tight with panic. "I don't belong in your world, Damien." He took her hand, his own trembling. "Then we'll leave it." She looked at him startled. "I mean it," he said. "Pick the place. I'll go anywhere you want." And so they packed their lives into a borrowed truck and left under moonlight, leaving behind the little house that had been their sanctuary. This time, they traveled deeper, to a fishing village, where no one read celebrity news and no one cared who used to own what. Damien took up fishing with the old men by the docks. Elena helped clean seafood at the morning market and taught kids how to braid thread into bracelets. They slept to the sound of waves and woke to birds and boats. They were happy again. But far away, the storm they left behind was gathering. Damien's father, Charles Calloway, was furious. His son's absence had shaken investor confidence. Stock prices were unstable, rumors flying. And worst of all, Valerie had taken advantage of the chaos, spinning the story of a betrayed fiancé left behind by a reckless heir. She became a media darling, sympathetic, poised, wounded. What no one knew was that she'd also found a legal loophole. a clause in a dormant contract Damien had signed before their engagement that gave her temporary power over part of his holdings, and she was using it to quietly dismantle everything. When word finally reached Damien, through a courier, a letter marked urgent, he knew he couldn't run anymore. He turned to Elena on the shore as the sun rose behind her. "My father needs me back," he said. "The company's in trouble." Elena's heart clenched. "Are you going?" "I have to. But just for a few days," he added quickly. "I'm not running from you this time." She didn't speak, just held his hand tighter. That night, they stood on the beach wrapped in silence, the tide kissing their toes. "Whatever happens," Damien whispered, "wait for me." At dawn, he boarded a small boat to the city, his silhouette shrinking into the horizon as Elena stood alone on the shore, the wind tangling her hair. Back in the city, chaos welcomed him. His father barked about loyalty, legacy, responsibility. Valerie smiled like a viper in silk, already orchestrating press conferences and subtle takeovers. "You can't play house with a girl from nowhere while your empire collapses," Charles shouted. "I'll help," Damien said. "But after this, I'm going back to her. I'm not living in a cage again." His father scoffed. "She'll never survive our world." "Then I'll live in hers," Damien said without flinching. Meanwhile, in the quiet village, Elena waited. Days became a week, then 2. No word, no calls, until one morning, a man in white arrived, Damien's father. He found Elena gutting fish by the dock. "He's not coming back," he said coldly. "He chose responsibility. You were just a distraction." He handed her a letter, unsigned, impersonal, and walked away. Elena stood frozen, the ocean roaring behind her. Then the knife slipped from her hands and hit the dock with a dull clatter. Her knees gave out, and she wept, not because she'd lost a billionaire, but because she'd lost the man who once promised her a world without lies. Life lesson from the story. This story reminds us that love isn't measured by wealth, status, or where we come from. It's defined by truth, effort, and the courage to choose someone every single day. Damien and Elena's journey shows that the strongest relationships are built not on perfection, but on vulnerability. When Damien walked away from everything he was expected to be, and when Elena forgave the man who broke her trust, it wasn't because their story was easy. It was because it was real. In a world obsessed with appearances, their love defied expectations. It grew in quiet places, through shared soup, laughter under leaking roofs, and promises made on windswept shores. But more than anything, it showed us that the people who see us at our worst, and still stay, are the ones worth holding on to. Sometimes life will ask us to choose between comfort and authenticity, between what looks good and what feels right. This story dares us to pick the harder path, the one where hearts are honest, where scars are seen, and where love isn't about rescue, but about rising together. So wherever you are in the world, remember, true love doesn't shout. It shows up, it stays, and it grows, even in the storms. Where are you tuning in from today? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing your stories. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story waiting just around the corner.